What is good, ladies and gentlemen? What is good? It is Monday, so you know what that means. A brand new episode of the Black Baseball Mixtape. I am your host, Cheats. I am joined by a cadre of guests this evening, and I'm really, really excited to get this show underway. But before we do, we've got to always thank our sponsors that make it happen. Shout out to our partners, Stilo Sports, the Players Alliance, Rebellion Harvest, and Numbers Game Scorecards. Make sure you check out all of our sponsors. Make sure you look at their products, review them, reach out to them. They're fantastic, fantastic partners doing great things in the space. So we're very, very excited to be partnering with such an illustrious group. And if you want to partner with the Black Baseball Mixtape, just shoot us a note. It's blackbaseballmixtape@gmail.com. We will be all over as we move into the 2025 season. But with no further ado, drum roll, please. We've got an illustrious set of guests, but I always got to start with my right-hand man, Flobo Boys, the
What's going
mayor.
on,
How
man?
you feeling, my guy?
Dude, I'm feeling great. Football is done. Baseball season in full focus. I'm ready to rock.
Football season is done, but we still have to weigh in on all the things that happened last night, and we will do that. And we'll also obviously kick off the season because I'm really, really excited. Pitchers and catchers are reporting this week. Malik is here. Malik, how are you feeling, my guy?
I'm feeling good. I got the butter on. I'm moisturized, It's not ashy during this cold season. Houston Astros looking pretty good this season, so I'm glad to be back. Thank you for inviting me back on the show.
I am excited that we made it work logistically. Logistically, we had some issues with you last week, but you are back. I am very, very excited to get your takes as we start this season. Somebody that I'm always excited to hear from, the host of the upcoming 10th Inning Talk, April. What's going on? How are we feeling?
Hey everybody. I am doing well and I'm so excited that pitchers and catchers have returned. Seems like a normalcy has come through the year, We need that.
Well, pitchers and catchers are reporting this week, and there's a snowstorm scheduled for Virginia starting tomorrow. So I feel like we are right on time. Joining us for the first time, man, we've got an illustrious guest with the podcast crew. I'm a fan of this brother. I can't keep up because I feel like he has like 4 or 5 different podcasts. I know one of them, he talks a lot about baseball. Danny Foxworth, welcome to the mixtape, my brother. First time.
Man, thank you so much, Cheese. This is legitimately a dream come true. Man, I remember this had to be like 2022. And I was just like looking at Black Baseball stuff on IG, and there was an account that I liked. And then next thing you know, the algorithm and just started lining things up. And quite literally, Black Baseball Mixtape was the first account to pop up under the list of suggested accounts. And I mean, just the name alone, Black Baseball Mixtape, it instantly grabs your attention. So, man.
Well, look, the feeling is mutual. Likewise, I follow you all the time. I'm jealous of all the various things that you get to do because you talk baseball, but you just don't talk baseball. You're talking all things sports, all things. I believe is it South Carolina?
Yeah,
it's South Carolina. Right? You're talking like community and culture stuff in your neighborhood. I'm a big fan, man. So I welcome you, and we are gonna get into it. And you're the perfect person to start with to ask about this because what they tell me, and I really never really paid attention. I've never really paid attention until this season, but it really does feel like with the conclusion of the Super Bowl that just took place yesterday. Shout out to all the Eagles fans in the world. With the conclusion of the Super Bowl, the only thing I saw on social media yesterday was in regards to baseball related, was baseball season is here. Baseball season is here. Football season is now officially over, and everyone was talking about baseball season starting. It has never been kind of an unofficial start for me. I usually I think look a little bit more to spring training, pitchers, catchers reporting. Danny, has this been in your experience? Has it been like, all right, the Super Bowl's over, now baseball season starts?
Yeah, for me, 100%. I mean, Gosh, baseball's been my favorite sport for the longest, mainly because truthfully, that was the only sport that I was relatively good at. Basketball, I looked the part, but man, I was trash, absolute trash. I'm not even gonna sit here and lie to you. I was in middle school.
Trash.
Yeah, in middle school, like beginning of the year, I'd be like first or second pick, and then like towards the end of the year, I was like, they would just pick me out of pity. It was bad. But yeah, baseball, I was pretty good up until about I got to the next level, like with the 13-year-olds, and they started throwing off-speed pitches. Bro, I kid you not, I didn't make contact on a single pitch for probably a month. This was like Dixie Youth baseball, and then Dixie Boys baseball is the next league that I was having the trouble with all these off-speed pitches. And in Dixie Youth, I was hitting second in the lineup. I was the only lefty in the lineup, and I could flare one over the shortstop like in my sleep, but man, just wasn't the case. I went from second in the lineup down to like ninth, and I stayed at ninth. And I was like, man, I did everything I could, but I just wasn't cut out for it. So yeah, I got bit by the baseball bug real early. So yeah, I'm super excited about baseball popping back up. That it's like as soon as the clock hits 0 on the Super Bowl, I'm like, all right, it's time. It's our season.
Flobo, has that been your experience too? Because again, this is all new to me. I've seen it a lot, but it's new to me.
Yeah, I've never saw so many social media graphics being like, "Now it's our time. We up next." I was like, "Oh,
right.
we saucy now in February." That to me was new. But I always felt like pitchers and catchers reporting was kind of like an unofficial holiday. It was like, "Oh, we're finally here. The hot stove is cooling down. We don't have to make up news reports on our news channels." So I'm all about that second week of February life. But this is the first year I felt like to try to make it into like a holiday, a social media holiday.
What about you, April? You and I follow a lot of the same social media accounts. And again, they were popping yesterday with baseball season talk.
Yes. What I have seen, particularly this off season, is the countdown. And I've appreciated watching the countdown coming, whether if it's for softball, which began on Thursday, college baseball, and then of course the pitchers and catchers reporting, and then we're 45 days out until opening day. So I think that people are more committed to this particular countdown. Like, we know that our time is coming since we do have the longest season, but social media has just opened the door for us to really claim this as our time.
Malik, what about you? Does this feel like the start of baseball season now that the Super Bowl's over, or do you wait a little bit longer to get into it? Like, I know people say basketball season doesn't even start till Christmas, and they're playing regular season games. So, does it feel like baseball season is starting for you?
Well, it makes me feel a little bit, I guess, bad. It's hard to feel bad for millionaires, but it makes me feel a little bit bad for baseball players. Seems like they just came off of the World Series maybe like a month ago. It seems like that was yesterday. And now we're about to go right back into spring training. And so it's starting to feel like baseball season. But for me, I've just been consuming so much baseball content from the World Series till now that it feels like it's just so fast. So on one hand, I'm loving it. On the other hand, I'm like, gosh, how are these guys' arms feeling? They just got done throwing in October.
Right. Look, Flobo, I'm gonna ask you, because this is the first time it does feel, for me, this is the first time where I really feel like there was no off season. Like, I really feel like, we just finished the World Series. We got a couple of weeks break, and now we're like really bad. I don't know if it was because of the the hot stove season was something we followed even up until now. We're going to talk about Alex Bregman and some other people that haven't signed, but it just feels like it's a year-round thing now. And I remember them talking about the NFL and the NBA feeling like they're year-round, especially because everybody gets so excited about the roster moves in the offseason. This season, baseball feels like it's year-round.
Yeah, and credit to, I'm not even sure to credit to, but whether it's the MLB media team or maybe just the community growing up, guys like Sean Spradling, you know what I mean? Like, having these access to countries and tournaments that I knew I didn't see when I was a kid was a game changer. I mean, that Kirby series was like a whole nother energy, and you're seeing them in Korea and Japan. So yeah, it is kind of a year-round thing. And I guess now, much like how we are with entertainment, how we're willing to watch, movies are in different languages now. It wasn't the case when we were kids. We're just more open to different expressions of the game. So yeah, it does feel like you can't escape it. And that's great because, I know those months when it was January, you're like, man, there ain't nothing to go on. You're watching old movies, you're watching classic games on TV. It's a whole different game now.
Danny, this is I think the NBA did this a couple years ago where, I just started remembering the NBA offseason being like as big as the regular season. Like who's going to what team? They're locking Paul George in closets and saying he can't sign with the Clippers and all kinds of stuff, and Kawhi and all these guys moving. And it never really felt in baseball like that until last year for me. Last year is when everybody was on Shohei watch. We were trying to figure out what was going to happen with Shohei Ohtani. And it seems like that kind of excitement about where Shohei would land has now carried over. Juan Soto got more money than Shohei, but I don't know if it was a bigger spectacle in the offseason than figuring out where Shohei was going to go. Now we had to figure out where Juan Soto was going to go. We're going to figure out where Sazaki's going to go. And it seemed like a bigger mainstream media thing. Has that been your take? Like baseball offseason now has become one of those things where it's as big as, say, the NFL or the NBA?
Yeah, 100%. Because I remember when Shohei was taking off, just like meeting with these different teams. I'm like, okay, is he going here? Is he going there? And, everybody was just sitting there waiting with bated breath, wondering where he was going to sign. And you just took the words out of my mouth because I was going to say like that fever pitch just transferred from Shohei over to Juan Soto. I'm sitting here like, man, so he's visiting with this team and he's visiting with that team. And man, these are the numbers that they're talking with his contract, like what he can possibly get. I'm like, oh my God. And then with him, and then goes from that to Sasaki.
Yep.
And I was like, Rangers are in the running. Oh, Rangers aren't in the running. I was like, you know what? I'm not even getting my hopes up. I know in my heart, I know he's going to sign with the Dodgers. It makes perfect sense. And sure enough, he signs with the Dodgers.
We talked about this last week. So I'll actually let Malik answer because he was on last week. But I want to ask you as well. When you hear 15 years, $765 million for a hitter, not like again, Shohei, I felt like Shohei broke the mold and we weren't going to get those numbers outside of a player like Shohei. The year, the following year, you've got a hitter that doesn't pitch, and the Mets open up 15 years, $765 million. What will it take for him to be worth that money?
For me, I think he's already worth half the money, and maybe because I'm a Juan Soto believer. I think all of a sudden when people were trying to pay Juan Soto, he just became trash. Like, oh, he can't do anything. But
facts. Haters out there.
He wasn't as good as he was. Like he wasn't a 20-year-old hitting bombs oppo. Maybe it's because I'm a Houston fan and I personally saw him, do us how he did us in 2019. But I think that for Juan Soto to put up at least 30 home runs a year, he has the 400 on base percentage that usually comes on every year. I think his lowest year was a 401. And so I think if he's able to maintain his steady production, just like Bryce Harper is able to maintain like 25 home runs per year, 290 average. With Soto, you're thinking like a 300 average, 400 on base, 500 slugging. You can pay a guy upwards of $45 to $50 million a year, just seeing how the game is going and where the money is going in the current state. So I think he's worth the money. I think he was already worth the money. A lot of teams missed out.
I don't want to make sure I got this straight, though. You said if he does what, he's worth the money? 20 to 25 home runs a year?
That's more of like Bryce Harper level. I'm thinking like 30 home runs a year, 400 on base percentage. I think he's got to give you more than that. More?
$765 million? I think he's got to give you more than that.
What do you want, Cheats? 130 home runs, 2,000 OPS.
I want him to be hands down the best player in baseball for $765 million. But
40-70.
Dang.
Hey, that's what, Chiefs. That's fair. That's very fair. I like that, April. 40-70.
Yeah, what did Shohei do for 700? 50-50?
40,
He did 50-50, right?
He did.
Just kidding. Yes,
Yeah.
he did.
And then, well, hold on, because you're kidding. But Ronald Acuna the year before did what? He did 47?
40-70. Yeah.
47. Mm-hmm.
Soto's not going to give you 70 stolen bases.
No, he's not. He's not going to get it.
But I need him to, Danny, I need him to be the best player in the game.
That's fair. For 765 mil, yeah, I get it.
Hey, look, I love it. And look, Flobo's over there gritting his teeth.
You know me, man, because people in the chat were hating on me for hating on Sweater.
I'm not, and here's the thing, I'm not hating on him. And this is a great segue, because I do want to circle back before we move too far forward. I want to circle back to last night's Super Bowl. I want to get y'all's takes on two things. But the one of the takes that has been constantly going off is obviously Kendrick Lamar talk. We will talk about Kendrick Lamar for anybody that wants to talk about Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance. We talk about the game for anybody that wants to talk about the game as well, briefly, because this is a baseball podcast. But it was the biggest, most watched sporting spectacle in the United States. Flobo, I'm going to start with you because you're always really good at this stuff. Did you watch the Super Bowl? What was bigger to you, the game or the halftime performance?
Oh, it has to be the halftime performance. And the thing is
it because the game was bad?
Not necessarily that. I think the Super Bowl kind of knows what it has to. It knows what it has to be, because even if the game was the greatest game ever, it's awfully secondary. The season's already done. They've already collected their money. The Super Bowl has always been a victory lap for years. People tune in for the commercials. They tune in for the Puppy Bowl. They tune in for the analysis in the booth. Like, it's all this extra stuff that it didn't really matter. But you had Kendrick Lamar, and I'm not going to go into whether it was a beat that he won or lost, because I know there are Drake fans out there. But here is somebody that was the top of –
He lost.
Okay,
Drake lost.
I said it.
There's no halfway sophisticated hip hop fan that can tell you Drake.
That wasn't the point, Chief. My point was that he was top of hip hop, but after the summer he became a household name, and so they're able to have that path over the course of a year is something we'll never see again. I mean, here's somebody that could have been in the alternate universe, your friend's favorite rapper, but never have crossed over. You know what I'm saying? So to see that with the Serena Williams and the drone shows and the lights at the Super Bowl, where the whole thing is designed to be extra things about culture you love, that was a victory lap for everybody, football, us included.
Malik, what say you? What was the bigger spectacle, the halftime show or the game?
It was definitely the halftime show. I think a lot of people were hip hop was in a peculiar state right now. And I think that with the culture wars that have been going on in hip hop, people were looking forward to seeing what Kendrick was going to do before they were looking forward to seeing what Patrick Mahomes was going to do. That's just my opinion. I think people were really waiting for this performance, especially with the Lil Wayne drama that happened in the last year, it being in New Orleans. Honestly, I think us people were looking forward to the performance more.
Does anybody have a take really quickly on, because there was a lot of Wayne hype before Kendrick got named. Then Kendrick gets named, and there was a little bit of wrestling and so forth. But as we move closer to the Super Bowl, obviously Kendrick wins 5 Grammys. He wins all this stuff. Was there any, the only people now I see clamoring for Lil Wayne right now are people that just don't like Kendrick. So it's did Jay-Z and everybody make the right decision with Kendrick Lamar over Lil? Just if you're just putting Kendrick Lamar and Lil Wayne, was that the right decision?
Yes, 100% was the right decision. We have the more performer. I mean, just objectively, if we're just talking bar for bar, I'm not going to disrespect Lil Wayne as someone coming from the South. But if we're talking in current strata, you have to pick Kendrick Lamar, who really just bodied hip hop last year, actually. And so I think it was just the most appropriate choice. Jay knew what he was doing.
April, would you have rather seen a Hot Boys reunion? What's that face? I'm looking at April. What'd you say?
I ain't trying to get the podcast canceled with my opinion.
There she goes. Get her. She said it.
I ain't trying to get canceled with this. I will say from this perspective, I look forward to the game more than the halftime show. I had already seen the Beyonce Bowl, so there wasn't
Right, you're
nothing that
done.
was going to
You're
be able
done.
to. I was done. But for me, I felt like the excitement over, can the Chiefs three-peat? Will, Patrick Mahomes, this conversation between him and Brady, with Brady actually commentating the game.
Who's gotten a lot better, by the way. They were giving like the beginning of the season, they were giving Brady some real trash ratings.
He got so
He
much
got a lot better. He got a lot better.
And for me, like, would Hurts get over that hump? Because we know what we saw in college versus now him being in the Super Bowl. A lot of people had, personal opinions about it. And I was just anxious to see him win. Like, I really wanted him to win. I heard, what's his name? I can't think of his name. ABC. Like, I was saying that all week. ABC, anybody but the Chiefs. And I can't think of his name. The MLB pro guy who says it all the time. So, they won. But that was bigger to me than the halftime show. Like, I was good with that. And to be completely honest, I loved the pre-show.
Okay.
So that was for me, the Black National Anthem, John Baptiste, who I'm a huge fan of. Just that gave me the chills. So watching the Southern Jukebox perform the Dancing Dolls. As a Louisiana girl, that did it for me.
I felt like they had to do things because they knew Lil Wayne wasn't going to be there. I felt like they had to do things that were traditionally Southern, traditionally Louisiana, they got Master P out there.
I was waiting for the No Limit reunion.
Like I felt Harry Connick, Harry Connick was gonna be there, Trombone Shorty was there. I just felt like they had to be over the top New Orleans because of all the things that kind of led up to this. And I do think I understand it, but I also do think they made the right decision in between those two. Like, I think Kendrick Lamar, if it was like a Kendrick Lamar Lil Wayne choice, I think they made the right choice. And there's a whole lot of things that they talked about. Like, obviously New Orleans is a special place. There's a special place for music, a special place for food, special place for culture, a special place for Black. And but they've never had a Super Bowl where it was like, oh, this person is from this region, so they have to perform. Like, the Super Bowl's just never been that way. So it was like, what was it last year? It was Usher, right? It was Usher's show last year.
Yep.
And it was like, so it was just one of those things where I think Lil Wayne did a good job in the sense that I think he spoke a little bit of the hype into an existence. But it's just, I don't think it was, you have to have this regionally attached act. And I think for the most part, for what it was worth, the game, I was looking forward to the game too.
Well, LA had the Dr. Dre concert though when it was in LA.
That was in LA. You're right. They had Dre and Snoop and Eminem, and that was because that was a couple. So there's always these questions surrounding these performances because there was a lot of criticism for that. Just having that much hip hop in LA at that time. There was a lot of criticism. I don't know if it was as critical as what we're getting today, but the world is different. Like, you just got to be honest. The climate is different. The president's different. Like, it's a whole different situation, right? And the only one that I remember, do you remember this? The only one that really protested, I think Eminem took a knee in LA while he was rhyming. And that was like the protest, right? Yeah. So, I'll go back to say I was looking forward to the game. I do think, and this is a good question for the group, I think the Jalen Hurts story is one worth making a movie about. Because I followed Jalen since the Alabama days, him getting benched for Tua, him having to transfer to Oklahoma, him getting drafted behind all of those guys. Then there were still questions up until last night's game if Jalen Hurts could be the guy that could beat him, could throw enough balls to beat him. And every step of the way, all this kid has done has said the right thing, done the right thing, They probably took 1 year too long at Alabama because he came back that year, remember? When he was kind of battling for his job, lost it, and then wound up saving him in the SEC championship game against Georgia, leading him back to the victory to get him back there. I think Jalen Hurts' story is one that is just unreal. Just unreal. And I think it's one that should be told to kids over and over again. This is the question I have for you. It's going to be a tough one because I'm going to put you guys on the spot. If there was a Jalen Hurts in baseball, if there was a Patrick Mahomes in baseball, who would be the Jalen Hurts in baseball right now in an MLB? Who would be the Patrick Mahomes in MLB?
Well, I gotta think
That's a good one.
I don't have a Patrick Mahomes answer because it's kind of ironic because his dad was a Met. But I was just watching the story about Mark Vientos today because SNY dropped a little featurette because here's somebody that was good, always told, hey man, we'll bring you up. They bring you up in 22, they bring you down because they choose Brett Beatty over you. Then you're sitting back on the bench. They bring you up to be the DH, then they sign JD Martinez and they send you back. Then they bring you up during the season, you hit a walk-off home run and they send you down again. And he finally became someone who bailed out that team plenty of times in the stretch of that season. So if anyone has that, like, could just flip a vehicle, but said no, said yes, I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to work on what's good. I'm going to improve on what needs to be improved on and do it. I would say Vientos could be a Hurts for sure.
I like that. That's a really good one. I'm trying to think. Outside of the winning, because that's the thing. The Mahomes thing is just, you don't win that much in MLB, right? Like, he was going for a three-peat. He's already got, 3 Super Bowl championships. But as somebody that I'm thinking is, I don't even know, is kind of just labeled as the man instantly. But Mahomes has lived up to it. So who's a guy that was labeled as the man and then lived? Because he wouldn't be a Harper or even a Trout because they didn't win as much as Mahomes.
Yeah. I can't even think of that pedigree.
Like a Jeter?
Like a Judge? No, I can't even say it because Judge didn't win.
No, I'm saying Jeter. Jeter's got how many rings?
That's a hard one, man. That's
really a hard one.
Because a quarterback role is like, because you would think about like the 1-for-1 transfer would be a pitcher or a catcher, but then I can't think of anyone that was on that level of getting championships back to back like the way Mahomes was. I mean, he's a face of the league.
Who's a pitcher that had a run? Is there even a pitcher that had a run like a Mahomes has had a run?
I don't know if they've had a consecutive run, but if you're thinking about like the San Francisco Giants and that pitching staff, I mean, but you don't really think of, I mean, Matt Cain was a dog, but we don't think of him as like a Patrick Mahomes, like he was supposed to be the man. But that was a team that did have some championships, kind of, not back to back, but.
All right. Well,
they had Lincecum too.
Yeah, they had Lincecum. They had Baum. That was a good team.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
Can I say does it have to be a player?
Yeah. No, go ahead, April. Look, we're about to jump off this topic, so go off.
Because I was thinking Ron Washington, like his dynamic with prior to him being with the Rangers, getting there in 2010, and I'm very vivid because I was living there at the time, to 2011, and then he goes, and then he's coaching again, and then he's coaching with the Braves, and he finally gets his World Series in 2021. Like, he never got it I don't think he ever got it as a player. He got it in 2021 coaching with the Braves. And it was like, you watched him, you cheered for him, you rooted for him, you hoped that he had his moment. And I don't know about y'all, but like, I cried a little bit whenever he won because I was so happy for him. I love Ron Washington. So he would be my Jalen Hurts person.
I like it. Me too. Last question on this topic before we move on. Obviously, we had a pretty, I think, star-studded World Series. I mean, as we talked about it, media-wise, it was about as, made-for-TV World Series last year as possible. Yankees versus Dodgers. These were clearly probably the two best football teams in their divisions. The Chiefs in the AFC, the Eagles in the I would say so. The Chiefs and the Eagles were probably on that collision course for the Super Bowl. So the question I would have, though, do you prefer the one game win all, or do you like the series? Because the Super Bowl is obviously one game win all. Obviously, football you can't really do. You go through the playoffs, but it's just one game. Do you like the one game win all, the spectacle of one night, or do you kind of find yourself gravitating to the series?
Give me the series.
Give you the series.
Give me the series.
It was five. What was it? 5 games in.
I
New
mean,
York,
LA.
you
There were
like
2
it-
competitive
you like the
games.
build up
but
of the
yeah.
5 games.
Whatever has the least amount of Fat Joes. That's the one I want.
Oh, man. Oh, no.
That's the one I want, man.
Fat Joe still catches trains. I love Fat Joe.
Just say it, man. You change the whole dynamic.
I love
No,
it.
the series for sure. All day the series. Yeah.
I think if we're talking about one game, maybe the wild card, maybe. But I personally love the series aspect, the countdown to it, just the anticipation of it.
Wait, hold on.
No,
Can I ask
the
a question,
series.
April? Are you a fan of game 163 over the wild card series?
I don't know. I'm gonna be
Okay.
honest. Like I go back and
For
forth
sure,
with
for
that.
sure.
I don't know if I want us to go back to the one for the wild card versus this. I don't know. And obviously with the time and the questions behind it, but that's something to pose to everybody else too. I don't know.
It's kind of like you have to see it for me. Like you have to see it and live it. And so in theory, I like the 3-game series. In theory, I think baseball is one of those games where I think to prove you're the best, I think you should win a series, even if it's 3 games. Even if you look at the College World Series and the College World Series finals, remember they would do the whole kind of double bracket, double elimination College World Series tournament, and then they would get to the championship game and play 1 game. And I was like, that makes no sense. That makes no sense to me. So in theory, I like the 3-game series, even what College World Series does now. Yet, I will say there is nothing like the intensity of that 1 game. That 1 game when I hate it. I hate it for the teams that are playing in it, especially that 163, because you played 162 to get to the 1 game. But the intensity of that 1 game, who was it a couple years ago? Was it Pittsburgh that had the 1 game? I was hosting the 1 game at home, and it was just the crowd was going crazy, and I was just like, that's the most intense baseball I've ever seen. Is that 1 game.
Yeah, given the series, I mean, I'm thinking about the Mets in 16 when they lost 163, and even in 2022 when they lost a 3-game series to the Padres. It's like, at least you go, hey, look, we had 2 games, we had 3 games, thank you, postseason, peace out. But I was just curious because I noticed some people want to say the postseason's too long. Let's go back to where it was.
There's a lot of teams in the playoffs. We talked about that. We talk about that every time the playoffs comes in. It's like they're never going to go back. I do like. I like less teams in the playoffs. Like, I do like that. But the intensity is one thing that's crazy. Before we go too much further, we do have an audience question on Instagram. Shout out to Mind Muscle Med, good homie, met out there in Houston last season. He is asking the group, which Black American prospect, this might be a Malik question, what Black American prospect do you think is poised for a call-up and a breakout season? I will preference this by saying last year, I think the number finished with 5. I'm talking about 5 call-ups that were Black Baseball Mixtape interviews on the pod. I think we had 5 or 6 that got debuted in the major leagues last season. What Black American player do you think is poised for a call-up and a breakout season in 2025?
You're asking me, right?
Oh, I'm asking the group, so I want to make sure we get the question answered. And make sure you keep putting your questions in the chat. We will try our best to answer them.
For my opinion, the lowest hanging fruit. The lowest hanging fruit that's going to be called up it's got to be Christian Campbell. for the Red Sox.
Red Sox organization. He's a top 10 prospect. He's the highest rated Black American prospect on the
Tennessee guy, right?
Yeah, definitely.
No. That's Christian. You're thinking Christian Moore. You're thinking Christian.
Okay,
Campbell.
my bad.
Yep.
That's another guy though. That's another guy that we got to watch because the Angels they move guys up very quickly.
Yeah, I think Christian Moore. There's a good chance that Christian Moore from Tennessee debuts this season. But but Christian Campbell is ranked number 7 on the MLB prospect list. He's a Red Sox organization. The Red Sox, by the way, have I think the most in the top 10, top 15, top 20 on their prospects. They have a couple other guys, Roman Anthony, I believe, Mayer, who seems to always be on the prospect list, Marcelo Mayer. But I think Campbell is a guy that's really has turned a lot of heads as looking into this season. Any other guys that are on your radar as prospects that we might think about being called up?
I'm also thinking of Chandler Simpson. This is a player that's damn near stole, I think, 100 bases.
He stole over 100 bases last season for the Montgomery Biscuits. He's in the Rays organization. He did get an invite to spring training. I don't exactly know where Chandler's going to break camp, but I am very, very high on Chandler Simpson in the Rays organization. Yep, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think there were some questions about. I think there were some questions going into last season about if he was going to hit for power.
Yeah.
The issue is he's not a power hitter, and we hear about this is a great conversation to have because we hear about this all the time. You see a guy like Chandler Simpson, who, like you said, on base percentage awesome, stole over 100 bases awesome, and you're wondering like, okay, what does it take? What does this guy have to do? He's in Double-A. What does he have to do to get the call? Because he's doing everything that we would think from the outside that needs to be done. I've had some conversations with some folks that are closer to that situation, and I think there was a conversation was, can he hit for power? And that actually is a problem because at this current point in time, he's not a power hitter player. So it's like, do you take the player that you have that probably could be successful in the major leagues as long as you don't ask him to be a power hitter? It's like asking, somebody like, I don't know, it's a great example, but you're asking Ichiro or someone to say, okay, you've got all of these tools, but now we want you to hit, 25 home runs. Technically, Ichiro may be able to hit 25 home runs, but he's not a 25 home run hitter. And I think that happens that happens to players more often than not that we're wondering, like a Chandler Simpson, what more does this guy have to do? It's kind of a crazy situation.
That's a good question. And I think a thing about that is that we're seeing a lot of players with that similar profile getting drafted. The Dodgers picked up Kendall George, another fast, left-handed hitting black outfielder. We have the Marlins. They have Dylan Head, another guy who's a lefty swinger, kind of these Juan Pierre type players. And I think they're trying to search for power out of these guys. And another thing that they're starting to evaluate a lot more is exit velocity off the bat. So guys like Chandler Simpson, what I've read is that he's putting the ball on the ground a lot, but he's able to beat out, those plays. And so I think they're trying to find a way where he can be more of a line drive hitter, not necessarily a home run hitter, not trying to turn him into, like a slugger per se, but it's seeming like these teams for some reason are getting guys in the first couple of rounds who are fast. Enrique Bradfield Jr. is another example. And so we're going to see probably even more players like this, left-handed hitting black outfielders, which is a good sign. But hopefully they're not trying to change the way that they, that's gotten them in those first rounds, So hopefully we see a positive trend.
So there's two guys I'm thinking of. One of them is not Black American. He's Bohemian, but they're both very young. So they still there's a chance that these two guys not get the call this season because of just their age. But Sebastian Wilcott for the Rangers organization, born in the Bahamas. I believe he's only 18 years old.
Yeah, in Double-A.
Yeah. He played the Futures game last year. He's a grown man. he is a grown man. And he again at 18 years old, I believe that's his age. There's a good chance that he stays down for an entire affiliate ball season, but he's got all the talent in the world. And if the Rangers hold on to that kid, he's going to be special. Maybe not this year, but he's going to be special. The other one is Cam Collier's 20. Cam Collier's in Lou Collier's son. He's in the Reds organization. He was the MVP of the Futures game last year. Guy's a stud. Yeah, can hit a ton. He's doing all the right things. But he's, again, Walcott and Collier are both 20 years old. They're super, super young. They've got a lot of potential. And there is a question, because even when we were talking about Tatis and Vlad Jr., those guys debuted at 21.
Right.
So now you're looking at 18 and 20. I don't exactly know when Collier turned 21. How old was Holiday last year when he got called up? Was he 20?
I believe he was 20 or 20. 20 in a few days.
Yeah.
And so I just don't know. I don't know kind of if that's the best thing for these young guys to get the call so early. I mean, obviously, if you can play, you can play. But I looked at what happened last year to Jackson Holiday, and it was up, down, up, down, up, down until the end of the year, where he kind of started to feel like he got a little bit more comfortable. But he had seen it a couple times throughout the season. They still threw a lot at a young man who, like Cam Collier, whose father was a pro. Like, he's been around the pros his entire life in that regard. He kind of knew what to expect. But these guys, when you talk about Cam Collier, you talk about Justin Crawford, you talk about there's a couple guys. Tamar Johnson's 20 years old. They're just so young. Drew Jones is the guy I was thinking of whose other father's a pro, right? That even though they should be they should have probably got the game more from directly from their pops, but it's just they're so young. They're so young.
Very young.
All right, good questions, ladies and gentlemen. If there's more questions in the chat, let us know.
Yeah.
It is that time of year, and I want to switch. Definitely want to, again, one more time, I want to thank our sponsors. Shout out to Stilo Sports, the Players Alliance, Rebellion Harvest, Numbers Game Scorecards. Couple of things that we wanted to talk about before we're going to also talk about college baseball and college softball just a little bit as we close this out, as this is a big week for them as well. But we're in a position where there were a couple of offseason moves that involved Black American players, and so I know April is chomping at the bit to talk about Jason Hayward signing with the Padres, and I know Flobo's chomping at the bit to talk about Tommy Pham signing with the Pirates. Tommy Pham. I'm going to start with you, April. Jason Hayward, who let's just call a spade. Remarkable career, but for all case in point, when he left the Dodgers, we didn't know if he was going to get picked up. He got picked up by the Astros to close out last year's regular season. But if somebody had said, hey, Jason Hayward's going to ride off into the sunset, not come back for another year, I would not have been too surprised. Are you surprised that Jason Hayward signed with the Padres?
Yes. Yes, especially considering, what we know.
He's 35 years old, by the way.
Yeah, he's 35 years old, but he's still playing at a pretty decent level. And he's also been a great mentor, on the teams where he's been. I think from a competitive standpoint, I was shocked that he went to the Padres. I'm not going to lie. On the other hand, because I like him as a player and I think that he still has juice in the tank, I was happy to see that he was still picked up by a team. So it was almost like a bittersweet moment, like, no, don't go there. But then also, yay, he still has something to be able to show us. So I'm actually interested because I know I asked y'all, where exactly is he going to play? Are the Padres going to make some moves in regards to maybe moving Tatis back to shortstop? Or is he going to be playing in the outfield? Or is he going to be just a player who comes off the bench? I'm interested to see exactly what kind of impact he's going to have on the Padres as a player.
I'm interested as well. I think the consensus in the group chat was that he probably was not going to be an everyday outfielder. How did the Dodgers? I mean, you watched this closely. How did the Dodgers use him? Did they use him as an everyday outfielder? Because I do not think they moved to Tatis. But Porfar left for the Braves. So, but I would think it's probably going to be a platoon situation, right?
Because Padres also got their eyes maybe moving a couple of infielders, so it's very possible that move could happen. He was playing with all the injuries, he was playing on a pretty consistent basis. Because remember, pretty much everybody on the Dodgers was hurt last year. Yep. So yes, he was playing right field, and then Mookie moved to second base. But when they moved Mookie back to right was when he lost the playing time and then ultimately was DFA'd. So that was what kind of left him out from our team.
I mean, he played 63 games last year with the Dodgers. 63 games last year, batted .208. So I mean, there was some, there's some issues there. Didn't show a lot of power. Had 6 home runs, but I do think, like you were saying, Hayward is a character guy. He's a clubhouse guy. He's a true vet, and I think he's an asset to any team, even at 35 years old. I want to ask Danny and Malik, are you guys surprised at 35 years old that Hayward signed with another team to make another run at it?
Yeah, Danny, because that's actually Danny's guy. Danny has watched him since minor league. So Danny,
yeah, I was legit shocked when you said he was 35, because I remember watching him. He used to play for the Myrtle Beach Pelicans when they were a Braves affiliate. So I think him and Elvis Andrews were teammates. And man, I can't believe he's been in the league that long. But I think they are going to platoon him, because they also signed Connor Joe from the Pirates, and he plays left field as well. So I think that's going to be the plan.
Well, look, this will be the telltale sign here, Danny. In 2010, Jason Hayward debuted with the Braves. He played 142 games at the age of 20 years old. So wow. he has been in the game at the highest level since he was 20 years old. He is 35 now, and like I said, reputation is everything, and his is impeccable. We were talking about him being 35 years old. Flobo, Tommy Pham is 36.
Yeah, my man Tommy Pham.
Pham is 36, and he just signed another contract. He signed with the Pirates.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What do you make of Tommy Pham, the ultimate journeyman? Tommy
Pham
signed with the Pirates.
We're talking about football kind of comparisons, right? We said Mark Vientos or Jalen Hurts. I'll even say Freddie Freeman or Pat Mahomes, but Tommy Pham, he's your Joe Flacco, man. Just a new team every week. They're showing up and showing out. How many times has this man, at his age and his eye condition, is still leading his squad in OPS? The man's defying time and physics. My man Tommy Pham, team number 10. I'm going to be a fan of the Pirates now, guaranteed.
He's been on 10 teams?
His 10th one, yeah.
Holy smokes.
Tommy Pham debuted.
Wow.
Tommy Pham debuted in 2014 at the age of 26.
Yeah, he wasn't young.
And so the thing is about Tommy Pham too, last season he played for 3 different teams just last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he started with the White Sox, went back to the Cardinals. Remember, his first at bat with the Cardinals was, I think, a grand slam home run. And then did he finish the season with the Royals? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
That's what happened.
And again, everywhere Tommy Pham goes, it just seems like he's a hit machine. Like you said, he's doing this. He's in the playoffs. I mean, what was it? Arizona playoffs before that. Like, so it's. I mean, hey, look, Tommy Pham is. You had him in the Mets in 23 as well, Flobo.
Yeah, and to be fair, he was the first kick in that organization when he was like, "Y'all are lazy. Like, I'm coming to big batting practice early. Y'all showing up late." and people took that paragraph out. It was like the Mets were soft, which was right. But the more important thing was, here is somebody that somehow has a reputation, right? Every time Tommy Pham does something, there's always someone in the comments, "Strip club, haha, Jock Peterson." But he's still going to work, and the teams he's on, he's still contributing. He's not doing anything in the locker room that's bad. He's just doing his thing and minding his own business. I respect the heck out of that.
He's one of those guys where it's like it's either you love him or you don't. You know what is a good equivalent to me? I think it's like Russell Westbrook. It's like Tommy Pham has Russell Westbrook energy, where a lot of folks are really like Russell Westbrook is my man. He's gonna come out there, he's gonna work hard. You know what I mean? He's gonna do his thing. But Russell might, he might fight a fan or two. He just might. He just might.
Yeah.
And the people that don't rock with Russ don't rock with Russ. So I mean, I feel like there's a lot of Russell Westbrook energy there. And I mean, I don't know. I've actually had an opportunity. Last year we were around Tommy Pham in the Bahamas, and I'll tell you, the guys had a lot of respect for him. Hung out with him. He played dominoes and cards every night. He's a great dude. So there you go. Malik, April, Alex Bregman, where are we going?
Oh, Alex Bregman drama.
Where's Alex Bregman signing? What's happening?
I'm gonna let you start off with that one.
Okay.
You got an Alex Bregman. You got an Alex Bregman poll. You guys were, by the way, all of you guys are right about Pete Alonso. By the way, everyone was right about Pete Alonso last week. Do we have an Alex Bregman poll?
Okay. So the latest report that we have on Alex Bregman is that he has a couple, if not 3 6-year deals out there. There's a deal out there with the Cubs that included a lot of opt-outs. They like to kind of do the opt-out deals. But it's seeming like Bregman is trying to get as much money on the books as possible for a deal. I heard that Houston actually upped the money offer for Bregman on the 6-year deal from the original 5. I mean, it was like 6 years, $156 million, which is a pretty good deal. That's the deal that Chapman got. It's going to be a really awkward press conferences. That's all I have to say. Is like when he signs with whichever team he signs with, whether it's Houston or not.
Where does he go? Where does he go?
I can't say that he's coming to Houston, but I think that Detroit might be the team that gives him the most money. It might not be the team that he's the most successful at, just given his numbers at that ballpark. But I think they're the ones that are going to probably give him the most money in their offer.
Hey, if he signs with Detroit, he's got a young core there that everybody's excited about, and they just signed Jack Flaherty. So Detroit is making some moves. April, where do you think Bregman ends up?
I honestly thought that when the season ended, the relationship between him and the Astros were done. Right. So this whole back and forth thing between them, it just seems like a toxic relationship. Like somebody needs to cut the cord because at this point, I'm annoyed. I honestly, and I think I told this to y'all last week, I thought that he was going to be a Tiger by this point. Like it's literally spring training is right around the corner.
Yep.
So I thought that he would be there. I thought that he would be reunited with AJ Hinch. And then here come the Cubs trying to offer something. So
the shade.
I don't see him as an Astro. I see him in a different uniform. But I do think that he is still trying to hold on, maybe that they might come and offer something because he wants to remain an Astro. Maybe that's what's holding him back. I don't know. But me personally, I want to see him. Yes.
April, you think the relationship is done? Flobo, Danny, do you have any thoughts on Bregman's final destination here?
Final destination. You know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say he goes back to the Astros.
I like that.
I'm with you.
I like that.
I'm with you. I'm with Danny on this. I feel like, again, a lot like Pete Alonso, where it was everything's looking like it's in shambles, everything's difficult, everything's hard. Well, his comfort level in Houston obviously is there.
Right.
They can make the arrangements to try to, like they've already said, they can make the arrangements to get him back. I think they've looked at the landscape now, and again, the Cubs. I guess the question is how much are the Cubs and the Tigers willing to overspend? But if all things money wise are close, I think he finds it in his heart to go back to the Astros. This is where I am on it.
That's where his heart is. But
so there you go. Flobo, any thoughts on Bregman?
Talking about overpaying. That's what the Cubs do all the day. So I'm going with Chicago, man. I mean, Shota can't do it by himself, man. I really feel like you did the AL thing for a while. You were successful. Did it roll out the red carpet. You're not like Pete Alonso, where you can say, "Oh, the Jays are talking to me too," right? Like the Cubs are a decent organization. That's my vote.
That's my question: is who they're negotiating against at this point? Who's in the mix to negotiate? If the Tigers, Cubs, and the Astros, are they negotiating against themselves? Because at this point, he's got to get in the camp, right? Sometime soon.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a long-term deal. I mean, I think those deals aren't just happening anymore across the board. And a lot of these new teams with new front offices, they just say 2-3 years. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's not much there. Not much of a market.
And Kyle Tucker is a Cub now too.
Kyle Tucker's a Cub that might help him out there a little bit. I mean, Bregman, we're looking at Alex Bregman is 30 years old. All right. He debuted with the Astros. He's only been an Astro. He's played all his entire career with the Astros, 2 All-Star seasons. He debuted with the Astros at the age of 22. I just feel like there's a lot of pull there.
He also has a salsa. So if he moves out of Houston, that salsa's done. The stores are not selling that. HEB, they're going to probably take it off the shelf.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Condiments is going to be the reason. Condiments is the reason why he's going to leave.
And Malik, you also mentioned that he also played for LSU. So I personally wondered if he just wants to stay in the South, because going to both Detroit and Chicago, that's a completely different climate as well.
Yes.
That is true. Speaking of climates, before we get to our last segment, quick question for you guys. It was announced that the MLB Hall of Fame, we've been talking a lot about the Hall of Fame. Shout out to CC Sabathia. The Hall of Fame inductees for 2025 has announced what caps they will wear on their bus going into the Hall of Fame. Most of these we already know. Ichiro is going to go in as a Mariner.
Right.
Dave Parker is going to go in as a Pirate. Now, he played for a lot of teams. Dick Allen's going to go in, I believe, as a Philly. He played for the Phillies and White Sox, I want to say. But I believe he's going to go in as a Philly. Billy Wagner is going to go in as an Astro. And CC Sabathia has decided he is going into the Hall of Fame as a Yankee. Any surprises here? The only one I think we should even talk about is CC. CC going in as a Yankee. Is that something that surprises anyone?
No.
I kind of would have loved to see Ichiro as a Marlin personally, but I'm the only person who feels that. I love those. The Ichiro Marlin years, man, were great. But no surprises. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any surprises there. If anybody that spent any time around CC Sabathia, I mean, he's New York through and through. That was him marrying up with New York and just being there. I think he was there for just over a decade. Obviously, pitching in the beginning. Obviously, Cleveland drafted him, got his start with Cleveland, got sent over to Milwaukee for that playoff run, which. If there should be a 30 for 30 about that Milwaukee Brewers team, that was actually one of, I think they had like 8 or 9 brothers on that team. Like you got to look up the number of Black American players on that Milwaukee team that made the run. There's quite a few.
Nigel Morgan was my dude, man.
Oh yeah. I think Ricky Weeks was on that team. Prince Fielder was on that team.
Yeah,
on that team. So that should be a 30 for 30 that Milwaukee Brewers run. But he landed in the Bronx, and it just seemed like. Even though CeCe's from the Bay, it just seemed like New York was home for him.
Like I think of him winning the championship as a Yankee. Like that is what comes to my mind. So him going in as a Yankee just seems the most fitting for him.
I pretty much agree with all that.
Makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. All right. So yeah, no real controversies there. I mean, the Hall of Fame is what it is. I'm excited for it. As we go through and we get ready for the end of this week, basically February 14th, some college baseball and college softball has already started. Some, especially college softball has kicked up with some earlier tournaments, which is really exciting. February 14th, I believe it's Friday, Valentine's Day, really kicks off the college baseball season in just major ways. There's tournaments all over the place. I believe April and Malik, you'll be in Houston, going to the Cactus Jack HBCU tournament there. There's a huge tournament that's kicking off in Puerto Rico with some really good teams out in Puerto Rico. Missouri's out there. University of Virginia's out there. There is a lot of excitement around the number of Black American players that are playing in both college baseball this year and college softball this year.
Yes.
I hadn't been paying as much attention, even though I've been following. In last couple of years, I've been more familiar with college softball and knowing the numbers of college softball players and Black American college softball players is elevated. It's elevated more than college baseball. We talked about this on previous podcasts because there's a lot of multi-sport athletes in college baseball.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the multi-sport athletes ultimately choose either football or basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Multi-sports athletes in softball, college softball, ultimately usually choose to play softball. Some of them may choose to run track and field and do some other activities, but a lot of them that are really the most talented college softball players wind up playing college softball. So the numbers are higher than you would think for African Americans, especially in college softball. This is a question I have for the group, because we have started to see over the last 2 years, and I do give a lot of credit to Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and Don Staley and the University of South Carolina. We're at a point now where women's college basketball is more popular and more exciting than men's college basketball. You could look at LSU, you could look at Paige Beckers at UConn, you could look at South Carolina, and Flaw J's playing at LSU.
USC.
The players that are playing Malaysia Fawali and all those guys are over at South Carolina. A lot of folks can't name anyone in college baseball, maybe outside of Cooper Flagg. Like you might name one or two folks, but it seems like, especially last year when you could name Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Cardo, like the tide has really turned. Is there a world where you see, because college softball has always gotten a lot of exposure. It's always been on ESPN. It's always, when we get to the games in Oklahoma, the college softball World Series, it's always been very prominent. Do we get to a point where we think college softball will be a bigger marketing product than, say, college baseball is? Or do you think we're already there?
I think with the return of the professional softball league, I think that will possibly impact college softball a little bit more. I think the one thing that probably keeps college baseball over softball is that the players don't leave as quickly as they do in basketball. Like, I don't know none of basketball players because they all leave and what happens. Whereas within baseball, they'll stay the 2, 3, maybe 4 years. And so I get a chance to be able to see their stories, for them to maybe redeem themselves, go to the regional, super regionals, and so forth. So it's kind of hard to be able to say. I will say, as I mentioned to y'all, I think right now softball has something going that no other sport does with OU in their run. So that makes it a little bit more enticing for them to be on another run in a particularly new conference. But will they completely eclipse baseball? I don't know if they're there yet. But what I am excited about is that, yes, they're getting even more exposure than what they've already had. So the eyes are on them than they were more so before.
I think Oklahoma has like 8 Black American girls on their team too. That's the thing that I think might fly under the radar. We talked about LSU and the wonderful video that they just released this week for Black History Month. They've got like 12 black girls on their team. Oklahoma has like 8. So the best teams in the country in softball seem to be finding ways to get the best Black American players on their teams. Flobo, do you think that would make a difference in the long run? We always talk about representation in baseball and saying, oh, we need to see more and more of ourselves. The girls are doing it.
Yeah. So I would say yes, but now it's different with the NIL stuff and how do you start a whole brand, right? These schools, these institutions are kind of brands. in their own right. So some way it's easy, right? You can give money to Harvard or give money to any other school like that and support all programs. But when a new sport breaks out, I'm not just talking about softball, I'm talking about lacrosse. I'm talking about cross country. You do need people to cross over and be out, be seen doing sketches and be seen being fashion mavens. I know it sounds weird, but they're able to say, hey, look, try this and buy into this. I know on the surface, you're like, whoa, these are capable athletes. Why are we doing this extra stuff? The reason being is that typically we have like a sports diet and we almost never want to try something new until something either controversial, something fantastic, or a whole new way of storytelling comes across. You look at the WNBA, yeah, Caitlin Clark gets a lot of credit, but I remember during the bubble with the orange hoodie was another watershed moment for WNBA, which wasn't planned, but had a rippling effects that paved the way for someone like Caitlin Clark. Not saying to have an orange hoodie moment in softball, but something along those lines.
I think the interesting thing is, I think when you talk about NIL, and you talk about potential to make money on their own image, I look at someone like Maya Brady over at UCLA, right? And I think she would be able to make way more money than a college baseball player. And not just, I mean, look, I've got eyes. I'm a human being. I'm not saying like, and what I mean by that is some of these softball players that like again, they are models. like for lack of a better term, they can put on a fit. You know what I'm saying? They can go on Instagram and people will follow, not even knowing that they're softball players. And so, I mean, I do think there's an interesting dynamic that comes to play when you talk about college softball. And again, they're athletes first. They're amazing athletes. They're some of the best athletes in the world. But there's things that are, I think, that are happening in college softball that are extremely exciting if you're a Black American parent, if you're a Black American fan, if you're a Black American player. Danny, have you seen kind of softball and NCAA softball kind of turning the tide a little bit, or what do you think?
You know, I'm a little like not as quite in the know with softball. Is like I'd say like with April, I was like, when she mentioned all the softball talk in the group chat, I was like, you know what, I need to lock in. I need to lock in because
that's a good question, because again, we do talk a lot about we talk a lot, like we hear a lot as baseball fans. We hear a lot of there's not enough of us on the field. There's just not, and I'm not going to root for the product because I'm not going to cheer for people that don't look like us.
Right.
Now, Danny, when you hear somebody that may not be as familiar, but when you hear LSU has 12 and Oklahoma has 8 and Georgia has another 8, like some of the top programs in the country, does that make you want to kind of see who these girls are and what they can do?
Oh yeah, my antenna's going all the way up. Yeah,
Malik,
like,
what do you? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say I didn't realize LSU had 12.
Yes,
we have 11 or 12.
We like that.
Yeah.
And they've had some of the best. We talked about this. They had some of the best Black players in the country, but Oklahoma is one that, again, that you are not going to Norman, Oklahoma, for fun, right? You're going because it is the best softball program in the country,
not the beach.
And they've got some Corey Hicks is on that team, and I want to say it's Tia Mallory. Is like they've got some players that we saw firsthand when the Players Alliance made the Tony Promise team and took him out to Seattle, and it was a group of amazing players that just ran through this entire All-Star tournament in Seattle. And I saw that team every game they played because they were the talk of All-Star weekend, and they were just running roughshod. Against all the girls. And again, 2 of those girls were Oklahoma commits. One of those girls, Precious, was a Georgia commit. And then they did it again last year. We saw them in Birmingham, and they've got LSU. That LSU's got a player. So it is one of those things where, like I said, I think the multi-sport athlete in softball oftentimes defaults to softball, where the multi-sport athlete in football and basketball for men can default to other sports, where obviously there's going to be a lot more accolades if they're a top. Very rarely do we have the top dual sport athlete and they actually choose baseball, unless they're getting drafted out of high school and getting a signing bonus. Otherwise, you're going to either try to play both or, you know what I mean, or you're going to go to the other sport. So I'm excited. I'm excited about go ahead, April, you're going to say something?
I was going to say, I think too with softball is that now you have the opportunity to see players that you actually want to like.
Right.
That is something that you haven't been exposed to prior. So yes, ESPN is showing more, but like they're even showing the plays. They're even talking about the plays now. Like I watched one spectacular play from a team, and then they're talking about all the upsets, and then they're talking about somebody having a no-hitter. The exposure gives you the opportunity to be like, oh wait, hold up, who catching this ball like this? Because I know that, you know, Tatis makes plays like this, but they doing this in softball too. So now it gives you the opportunity to want to tune in the same way you wanted to tune in when you were watching Angel Reese and whenever you were watching some of the other players. And I think that is what is going to continue to change the tide, because now you have an identity to be able to connect to.
I was going to ask, well, so what would you think it would take? And this is a big question for the group, but what do you think it would take for college softball to do what women's college basketball did? Because what women's college basketball did was phenomenal. I also feel like women's college basketball struck like a perfect storm. Like it really was like a perfect storm of having Caitlin Clark, having Angel Rice, whether they got along, didn't get along, whether they were adversarial or not, they had that narrative. Then they had South Carolina over here, you know, with Don Staley and so forth. And they had the world watching this narrative for 2 years. Because, again, this didn't start with last year's season, which was an epic season. It started the year before with South Carolina lost, right? And Iowa wins, and then LSU beats Iowa. That's when it started. So you have to have these narratives. What would it take in college softball? Would it be the personality? Like they have to just kind of shine light on personalities? Would it be a rivalry like an LSU Oklahoma? What would it take to turn like the world's eyes on college softball?
I think the whole OU, like they have to have a story to be able to follow. For me, the OU story is absolutely incredible.
It's a phenomenal.
Like I told y'all in the chat, nobody has had consecutive World Series championships since 2010. And now they're going to what maybe number 5, but also both OU and Texas are no longer a part of the Big 12. Now they're a part of the SEC. So they are going to be playing teams like LSU and also Florida, because don't sleep. It is not a walk in the ballpark when you go into Gainesville either. Those girls play some softball. So I think it's important for all of these sports channels and even us to promote the narrative that, look, these games are up and this team was supposed to be good, but they lost. And, you know, I remember like OU 2023 season, they lost one game all year. But those big games, like you just had the Texas-South Carolina game, everybody was tuned into that. We have to be able to promote those same games within softball so that people are aware that these girls are out there, this rivalry exists, and you need to be tuned in to exactly what can happen.
I'm with that 100%. So, like, if I was tasked with that, we're seeing out with a lot more sport leagues too. Baseball United was friends of the show. We talk about Unrivaled. What those two leagues did specifically was lean into a content core and say, hey, look, here we're going to give you some inline access to our stories, our backgrounds, our platforms, and allow other journalistic outlets to really write about the story and craft their own stories. Again, going back to that moment during the bubble with the WNBA journalism was there day one, but I really felt that was the first time people were crossing over from the cultural side, from the Black Voices side, from the music side to cover the WNBA, and that was different angles singles enough for someone like Clayton Clark to break through. So it's a little different in college. I know they're like businesses, but not businesses, but they're like institutions of higher learning, but not. But I do think opening that up to having different outlets cover it and having the Black Baseball Mixtape softball show or what have you can only help.
I think you referenced a couple times about the bubble and the energy around the WNBA, and I think you're right about that, Flobo. I think one of the reason why they were able to cross over is because they were one of the only leagues. One, they were obviously run by women, but they were one of the only leagues that showed guts. So if you remember the time of the bubble, that was also the time of 2020. That was the time of George Floyd. That was the time of protests, and there was a lot of people tiptoeing around what they were going to do, how they were going to make statements, and the WNBA was obviously an organization that just said, no, this is who we are. They were the first ones to have statements on the court and have their names. You know, people came around, but I think they captured a moment, a cultural moment that really worked well. And I do think when we're talking about the women's college basketball the last 2 seasons and so forth, they've captured a moment as well, which clearly made them more popular. The women's NCAA finals got higher ratings than the men's NCAA finals last year. And it should have. They were an exciting game. Let me ask this before we get out of here, because we're coming up on time. And there's so much exciting talk to have. And I want everybody, look, we're here every Monday with this crew. Danny, you're welcome to come back as much as possible as well. We were talking a lot about college baseball, and there's one thing I want to ask about on a college baseball level, and it's about the exposure the last couple of years that we've seen when it comes to HBCU baseball. We've seen a lot of effort. We've seen, you guys are going to the Cactus Jack, which is a big tournament that gets put on television. People are reporting from there. Vero Beach is the Andre Dawson Classic that's always on MLB Network. Last 2 years, we've seen the Swingman Classic, which happens at All-Star Weekend, where it's some of the best HBCU college baseball players as well. We are seeing a lot of effort into, highlighting and exposing HBCU baseball. I will say, I want to say last year, maybe out of all the draftees, maybe 2 of them, I think 2 were HBCU draftees. And so I'm interested because there's great coaches in the SWAC and the MEAC and HBCU. There's some talent there, some real talent, draftable talent, but it's not the SEC. It's not the ACC. A lot of the effort that goes into HBCU baseball exposure, I'm wondering if we're at a point where, do we think that it's paying off? Do we think that it's do we think that it's doing what it needs to? I will say this: with every year, we're starting to see more and more, especially with NIL, more and more African Americans playing in those power conferences. So I'm really interested to see, do we think the efforts to highlight HBCU baseball is working, or what more do we need to do? Not we, but what more needs to be done?
That's a fantastic question. I know that's an answer everyone has a theory on, so I like to hear your answers for sure around the group. But I think it's a 2-pronged approach, right? When you have an HBCU event, one, you showcase the talent now, or what's going to be talent in 2 to 3 years. But at the events themselves, that's when you bring the entertainment, you bring the color schemes, you bring the culture too. When people do go see these things, goes, oh wait, it's natural for us to participate. So you get the representation visually, but then there's that cultural feeling of being like, oh, it's not. You don't have to pick and choose to play baseball to drop who you are. Maybe I'll let that know from my kid when they want to pick up a bat or something. So there is that. And I'll say more of that. It's always great. But once I understand that it's continuing to be authentic and we do have different interpretations of what that means and how we feature Black talent from their all different backgrounds, and I think there's room to do that as well and make sure you have those seeds planted for the next future generations.
I think we just have to be hopeful that the MLB takes a concerted effort in, scouting and actually sending some of their evaluators from their teams to HBCU games. We see players from JUCO getting, drafted. We see players from internationally. There's a big international focus that teams are finally starting to invest in. I think the Orioles just now really started investing into their international market in the Dominican.
They better. We got a 35-year-old pitcher from Japan.
Exactly. So
Hey.
if the hopeful would be that MLB sees that there's value in the HBCU, circuit, that there's a lot of raw talent. We're seeing a big influx in Black prospects that we discussed earlier in this cast. So I think it's going to have to come from both ways, because I'm noticing that the efforts that are being put into, HBCU exposure and, games classics, but we just need more of a two-way street, in my opinion.
I think it's interesting because I think what happens for, especially because I've gotten to know quite a few HBCU coaches. I think the challenge is anyone that balls out at the HBCU is going to be in the Power 5 next year.
Yeah.
Like the transfer rules make it so easy for them to go to one school for another. So if you've got the SWAC player of the year or the MEAC player of the year, that kid is, as long as he has eligibility left, he's playing on a 1-year contract, looking to say maybe next year I can go to Texas A&M, or I can go to Duke, or I can go somewhere else. So it's a real peculiar position that the HBCU head coaches are in, because their best players, they're almost renting them, right? They're going to probably go to Power 5s. Now they have the opportunity to get some of those D1 guys, those Power 5 guys that don't pan out. Some of the best players at Southern were transfers from Louisville. Some Grambling best players or transfers from Division I powerhouse schools that didn't get the opportunity to play. And we talk a lot about that, but I wonder as we move forward, and this will be something that we track all year, because again, there's going to be another season of effort to highlight HBCU baseball games and tournaments and conferences. And I wonder, what is the end result of that? Is the end result of that to give them exposure so they can go to a Power 5 school and ultimately, get an opportunity to play there? Or are they looking to lift these programs up in general? I think I often think of the Dion thing with Jackson State. And the more I think of what Coach Prime did at Jackson State, the more I think that it is extremely exclusive to Coach Prime and Jackson State. And I'm looking around, and we'll see what Michael Vick does at Norfolk State coming up this year. But it just seems as if that man, with his personality and his kind of ability to just draw attention, put that spotlight on Jackson State, and in turn, obviously, got people talking about the SWAC and HBCU, ACCU football back, in a different way. But I wonder, is there an opportunity? Because I was asking someone else a while ago, is there could there be a Coach Prime in baseball? Not just HBCU baseball, but is there someone a pro that could come back to the college baseball ranks and have everyone talking about college baseball and everyone going to whatever the equivalent to game day is, and all the celebrities coming back for a weekend series? And I just don't know if that exists. I don't know if there's a single entity that could go back to a university and do what a Coach Prime did at Jackson State.
Absolutely.
I also think that Prime also had the personality before he even went there for that. So I mean, that's a great question, and I there are going to be a lot of players who are going to be moving on from MLB, and I wonder if that's also something that they're interested into coaching, into managing, and to taking on from that perspective. I would love to know that.
We'll be interested to see. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. We're coming up on the hour and a half. Final words for everybody. Let's go around robin. Our special guest, Danny Foxworth. Tell everybody where they can follow your podcast as well, your multiple podcasts, and any thoughts as you come into the upcoming baseball season is here, my man.
Well, first off, thank you all so much for letting me join in the reindeer games, man. This was a lot of fun, and this is something I dreamed about doing, and that dream became a reality. So, Chief,
First of many, my man. First of many.
Thank you. So, For all listening, you can find me on IG at Danny Foxworth 843. My podcast is At the Plate with Danny Foxworth. That I'm just basically talking about baseball, talking to people about who their favorite baseball teams are and how they became, like how their love affair with baseball started. And also have another podcast called Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. That one covers a myriad of topics. So you can find that on all streaming platforms. And then I have a Candle podcast entitled A Wicked Good Time. And that one basically
I get it.
Yeah, basically I sniff and review candles and talk bad about my Carolina Panthers. But they turned it around towards the end of the year. So I take the foot off the gas. And then I have another my fourth podcast is called Growing Up Low Country with Liz and Danny. So basically my friend Liz, she's my oldest friend. Well, she's my first friend ever. And we basically just reminisce on what it was like, growing up in the Low Country. I'm from Moncks Corner, South Carolina. It's like a half hour from Charleston. So we just once a month we just chop it up and reminisce and do a podcast. So yeah,
we got to do a meetup at a River Dogs game, right? Charleston River Dogs.
Yes. Yeah, that's why I lit up when Malik brought up Chandler Simpson, because they're a Rays affiliate. So I got to see him and Tosh Bradley and Xavier Isaac.
Oh yeah,
they got some boys. They got some boys.
Some boppers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man,
all right,
I'm sorry. I was going to say my biggest goal is to get to the All-Star game this year because it's in Atlanta.
Oh yeah.
So that's at the top of the list.
We will meet everyone there. We'll meet you there.
See y'all there.
We will meet you there. Malik, last words for you, my man.
Speaking of meetups, the World Baseball Classic next year, 2026. Let me plug that in. Houston.
Okay. Plant seeds. Sprinkle.
Yes,
You got something sooner than that, though. Tell the people where you're going to be this weekend.
Yes, we're going to be at the HBCU Classic, hosted at the, I guess, Dyken Park now. You're going to see some awesome HBCU baseball, see some awesome players that are going to be there as well. The Players Alliance is going to be there as well, I believe, right? Cheats.
I got to check. I don't know. I know they were there last year, and that's how I got to go, but I don't know if they're going to be there this year.
Well, we definitely got to tap in. So you can follow me on Instagram at ButtermanCane. I make body butters and make sure that people aren't ashy, never ashy. Yes, Lord. And so follow me there. Also make documentaries on the underground Houston hip hop scene at Houston Art. You can follow us there as well. Love talking baseball, and I'll see y'all sometime next week, hopefully.
Yeah, man.
It's so modest. The smartest man in baseball.
Right.
April, you're going to be with Butterman Kane this weekend, right?
Butterman Kane.
I will. And y'all, I'm so excited about it because I looked up the schedule of the teams that are going to be playing. And Saturday for sure, Southern versus Grambling at 3 p.m. at Dyken Park. That is going to be a huge thing. I remember last year, Cheats went to I think it was the early game, and he was like, man, there were a lot of people.
Southern showed out last year. It was cold. I remember it was like cold and rainy.
Yes.
And Southern showed out.
Yes, and then Texas Southern and Prairie View will be playing that Saturday evening at, I think, 7 p.m. So there are going to be some great games all weekend. Y'all look for us. We'll be there, but make sure you follow me. Go ahead.
Is there going to be a Southern Grambling game on the tilt? Because there's some get back. I know Coach Johnson and Coach Pierre, there's going to be some get back from the SWAC tournament championship if they're on the schedule to play each other.
Oh, it's 3 p.m. Saturday. I already checked that.
Okay,
yeah. 3 p.m. Saturday. So make sure y'all tuned in, and y'all make sure you follow me as well.
I'm sorry.
No,
it was Jackson State. Coach Johnson's over at Jackson State. Omar Johnson's over at Jackson State, and I think they played Jackson State and Grambling played in the finals last year in the SWAC tournament, right?
I have to go back and look.
Yeah, I think so. So there's a lot. Again, we were talking about those HBCU rosters, and they turn over a lot. So they there's some really exciting players. Coach Pierre is one of the best coaches in the business. So is Coach Johnson over at Jackson State, Coach Crenshaw over at Southern. So you'll get a chance, both of you, to interview those guys, meet them, and I can't wait for the coverage to be on the Black Baseball Mixtape. So selfishly, I'm very excited about this.
Selfishly,
I am. Make sure you before we go too much further, make sure you're checking. If you have not checked the website, make sure you do so. Our Black History Month Major League Baseball tracker is in full effect. We are tracking all 30 clubs and what they are posting on X for Black History Month, and there are some updates. There have been some updates, and a couple. I think the Yankees just made an update today, posting about Stanton. So there's some updates that we're excited about. So we'll make sure we check that. Flobo, what say you? Last word.
Saying me, Yankee ticket to Sweet Time is what I'm saying. Unlike everyone else, I'm gonna be at home this weekend. I ain't going out nowhere. It's all good. So basically, today was like the first season premiere of the In the Booth podcast, the companion show to Black Baseball Mixtape. Yeah. Anyone in the business, the fan, we got 10th inning talk coming soon. I want to get you on the show, Danny, because you rocking that Rangers shirt. I've been trying to find a Rangers fan for like a year. Are you got to get you? Gotta get you on the show, man. What's up? But no,
let's do it.
It's done. Booked it. You got all y'all are witnesses. You can't back out now.
Can't back out now.
And I got to get you on at the plate.
Done. Do the exchange. If I'm not doing that, I have a sports comedy blog. It's called justasandwich.com, kind of where I do my reps when it comes to writing the articles and stuff. Trying to see if I can get that on that blackbaseballmixtape.com blog. We got to talk about that, Cheats. But in the same time, though,
you're always welcome.
I just say every Monday, man. I'm blessed, man, because like you were saying, 2-3 years ago, I didn't think there was a community, and now we're just getting bigger and better every season. So thank you.
Oh no, I mean, hey, look, Discord. We have a Black Baseball Mixtape group in Discord. If you guys have not joined in, just send me a message. We've got another podcast. We're back now. We're back every Monday. You'll see this group every Thursday, Friday, but every Thursday you'll have a new podcast dropping. Last week we did an IG Live podcast, so shout out to Lewis Brinson. Shout out to Coach Alexander Weiss from Minority Baseball Prospects. They were on IG Live. If you haven't gone back and listened to that, those are a little bit more specific. And the conversation last Thursday on IG Live with a former professional player and one of the most legendary coaches in Atlanta turned into the owner of the kind of largest minority baseball kind of platform in the country. Mm-hmm. The conversation surrounded around what do players have to do to be successful. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking to Lewis and you're talking to Alex, you really should say, what do Black players have to do to be successful at every level? So if you're a player, if you're a coach, if you're a parent, go back and listen to that IG, because they were dropping gems over gems over gems about what it takes to get to the next level. And they've seen it all. So that was exciting to have that. Obviously, last week, Flobo was talking about Juan Soto no longer being a villain.
What?
There's a poll. Matter of fact, I'll end with this because Flobo Flobo's ability to do this posed a question, and we talked about this because I think it sparked a lot of conversation through the week, and it really did spark Thursday's podcast. And the question was about, I think we used the wrong word, Flobo, to be honest with you.
Right.
But we used, can Black players at the highest level be average? I think we used mediocre. Mm-hmm. But could they be? And we took a poll about it, and I think half the people called us idiots.
Right.
Half the people that were listening. I clarified this on Thursday, and I'll clarify this today. And what I mean by that is, if you are a Major League Baseball player, you are in the top % of the 1% of the most talented players in the world. Like, there is no such thing as a mediocre talent that makes it to Major League Baseball. So let's get that out of the way. What we were talking about, and what it really boils down to, is, production, and basically that word. I think we should have put talent in the question. Can you be an average talent or mediocre talent? I don't, I think it kind of washed out to being like, I think you have to have elite talent. to make it to Major League Baseball. But there was a lot of back and forth about that. Flobo, I thank you for the question. The poll came out, and I mean, I think we were all getting to the leash that black players have,
Right.
and it's a production lease. And I was so glad we had Lewis Brinson on, because Lewis is one of those guys that had, he's always been a prospect guy, a top prospect guy, and he'll tell you himself certain things worked for him and certain things didn't work for him. And at the end of the day, if his production dropped off, he was sent back down.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those things. It was a great conversation to have. Flobo, thank you for sparking such debate. We took a poll out there.
Comments were hot. Comments were hot.
It's coming in hot. Last thing I'll say is just everyone that follows online, make sure you send questions. If you have questions that you don't think about while we're live, just message me. We'll try to get to your questions as we move forward every episode, every week. I thank you guys for rocking with us as always. I want to thank our sponsors one last time: Stilo Sports, the Players Alliance, Rebellion Harvest, Numbers Game Scorecards. Make sure you check out all of our partners. I want to thank all of you, and we'll be back later this week, and we'll be back again next week. This is the Black Baseball Mixtape.